Before we begin, please subscribe and like this channel so you never miss a new true story. My son texted me at 3:47 in the afternoon. "Dad, we're having a housewarming party Saturday. Mum's invited, but we'd really prefer if you didn't come. It's a family thing." I read that message 3 times, not because I didn't understand it. I understood perfectly. I read it 3 times because I wanted to make sure I wasn't imagining the cruelty wrapped up in those polite words. My son, Marcus, was 32 years old. He'd never texted me anything like that before. We'd always been close, even after the divorce from his mother 15 years ago. Even after I built my business into something real, a construction and development company that took me from nothing to something people respected in Atlanta. I didn't respond right away. I set the phone down on my mahogany desk, looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office downtown, and just breathed. That's what you do when you've lived 63 years and learn that impulse is the enemy of dignity. You breathe. You wait. You think. My ex-wife, Patricia, called me that evening. She was excited, almost giddy, the way she gets when she's nervous about something. "David, honey, it's just a small gathering. Marcus and Keisha want to show off the new place. Nothing formal." "He doesn't want me there," I said quietly. There was a long silence. Then, "He didn't say that." "He did, Patricia. In a text. He said you were invited, but he'd prefer I didn't come." I heard her breath catch. That's when I knew she didn't know what he'd done. That made it worse somehow. Worse that Marcus had done this on his own, without being pushed. Worse that he was making his own choice to separate me from him, like I was an embarrassment he'd outgrown. "I'll talk to him," Patricia said. "Don't," I told her. "Let me handle this." But I didn't handle it that Saturday. I let it sit. I went to my office instead, caught up on paperwork, reviewed blueprints for the new commercial development we were starting in Buckhead. I didn't go to his housewarming. I didn't call. I didn't text an explanation or a hurt response. I simply wasn't there. I found out later what happened that night, not from Marcus, but from Patricia. Keisha, my son's wife of just 8 months, had told Patricia to go home. Those were the actual words, according to my ex-wife, spoken with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Go home. This was never your family." And Marcus had said nothing. He'd stood there in his new living room in that 3-bedroom colonial they'd bought with money I'd co-signed for, and he'd said absolutely nothing. Over the next 3 months, the picture became clearer. Keisha was controlling, yes, but Marcus was allowing it. More than allowing it, he seemed to want it. He was distancing himself from everyone in his life who didn't orbit around his wife, his mother, his friends, and eventually, me. I watched it happen with the same calm I'd learned to cultivate over decades of business dealings. I didn't confront him. I didn't make dramatic speeches about betrayal or ingratitude. I simply observed. I noted how his calls stopped coming, how the 3 times I invited him to dinner, he made excuses. How, when I ran into him at our church, his church really, the one his family had attended for generations, he looked uncomfortable, like I was an obligation he'd rather skip. And then, quietly, I started making phone calls. My attorney was a man named James Chen, sharp as they come, and he'd been handling my legal affairs for 20 years. "I need to restructure some things," I told him. "Move assets, revise my will, and trust documents." He didn't ask why. He was good enough to know that wasn't his business. We spent an afternoon going through my portfolio, the real estate holdings, the business, the investment accounts, the life insurance policies I'd taken out for Marcus years ago when he was born. I'd named him as beneficiary on most of it. We changed that. I set up accounts in Patricia's name, charitable trusts for the causes I cared about. A college fund for Marcus's future children, yes, but structured so it couldn't be touched by his wife or misused by him. And the business, my pride, my life's work, the thing I'd built from nothing in a city that didn't always welcome men who looked like me, I began the process of selling it to my senior management team, people I trusted, people I'd mentored. It took time. Legal paperwork always does. But I was patient. I'd learned patience was a weapon. I didn't say anything to Marcus. That was the key. I let him believe everything was normal, that his father was simply fading into the background of his new life, an older man slowly disappearing as his son moved forward. I even went to Christmas dinner at his house that year, sat at his table, smiled politely, and watched Keisha lord her influence over him like a crown. The breaking point came in April, almost a year after that housewarming party. Marcus called me, and his voice was different. Younger somehow, panicked. "Dad, I need to talk to you. Can you come to my office?" He was working for a real estate development firm downtown. Nothing too impressive, certainly nothing he'd built himself. I told him I'd be there at lunch. When I arrived, he looked like he hadn't slept in days. Keisha was having an affair, he told me, had been for months. She'd lied about where she was going half the week. He'd hired a private investigator. He was devastated, humiliated, and he'd finally realized, his voice breaking as he said it, that he'd been so focused on pleasing her, on keeping her happy, that he'd pushed away everyone who actually cared about him. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, and the tears came then. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything. I pushed Mum away. I pushed you away. And now my marriage is falling apart and I don't have anyone." I listened. I let him speak. And then I told him the truth. "Marcus, I love you. That hasn't changed. But I need you to understand something. I didn't wait around hoping you'd realize your mistake. I made decisions, real decisions. I've restructured my estate and my affairs. Your mother is taken care of. The business is being sold. And when it sells, you're going to receive a distribution as my son. But it's not going to be what you expected. Most of what I built, I've moved to charitable trusts and educational funds." His face went white. "Dad, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I don't raise my children to think they can disrespect me and face no consequences. Not violent consequences, not cruel ones, but consequences nonetheless. You made your choices, and I made mine. I'm not here to rescue you or to finance your life anymore. I'm here to tell you that actions have weight, that dignity isn't negotiable, that the people you push away might not be waiting when you realize you need them." "Dad, please. I'm not finished. You're going to get through this divorce. You're going to survive it. Probably thrive in it if you're honest with yourself. And I hope you'll become a better man because of it. But you're going to do it knowing that your father didn't fall back into the role of savior. He walked away. He protected himself and the people who deserved protection. And that's what respect looks like, son. That's what self-preservation looks like for a man who's worth something." Marcus called me 3 times a week for the next month, trying to negotiate, trying to get me to reverse my decisions. I didn't. They were legal and final. Our lawyer had made sure of that. The divorce went through. Keisha got her settlement, not as much as she'd hoped when she thought she was married to a wealthy man, but enough. The business sold for $18 million. Marcus received a substantial sum, less than he would have, but enough to rebuild his life if he was smart about it. And slowly, over the next 2 years, my son became someone I recognized again. He went to therapy. He rebuilt his relationship with his mother, with genuine humility this time. Not the performative kind, He started coming to Sunday dinners again, and there was no resentment in it, just a quiet understanding that his father was a man who couldn't be taken for granted, who had standards, who would love him, but not be used by him. At my retirement dinner last year, Marcus stood up to give a toast. His voice was steady, and his eyes were clear. My father taught me that love without boundaries isn't love. It's just weakness wearing a kind face. He loved me enough to let me fail. He loved me enough to walk away. And when I was broken and ready to understand it, he loved me enough to let me come back. But as an equal, not as a child. He raised his glass to a man of dignity, to my father. That's when I knew the real revenge wasn't about the money, wasn't about restructuring the will or selling the business. It was about showing my son that love and respect can't exist in the same space as disrespect, and that sometimes the greatest gift a father can give is the refusal to accept anything less than dignity. Sometimes the best revenge is becoming the man your family wished they'd valued in the first place. True story.